My name is Levina Mars, and if you only knew me from the outside, you'd think I had it all. A neat little house, a handsome husband with a good job, a family that smiled in photographs. But those pictures are lies, frozen masks hiding the truth. For years, I believed that being a good wife meant swallowing my voice and stitching a smile onto my face. I thought silence was loyalty. I thought patience was love. I thought endurance was strength, but every Monday night, like clockwork, the mask would crack. My husband never came home to hold me, or to share a meal, or even to ask about my day. No, he came home to remind me of my place, to bruise me, to break me, to make me a shadow he could trample before he called his mistress and whispered into her ear like I was nothing more than a practice run. Monday nights belonged to Solar. He would purr into the phone, his voice dripping with devotion. Not to me, never to me. I stayed through it all. I stayed when his spit burned on my cheek. I stayed when his words cut deeper than any slap. Barren, he'd sneer, as if my worth could be measured in the children I couldn't give him. I stayed when his mother, that serpent of a woman, threw her head back and laughed in my face. What kind of woman can't give a man a son? She mocked, her words clinging to me like oil I could never wash away. And still, I stayed, until the day the truth about that pregnancy surfaced, until the day I realized everything I thought was broken inside me wasn't broken at all. And in that moment, something inside me shifted, because when the people who vow to protect you are the very ones sharpening the knives for your back, you're left with only two choices: stay silent and die slowly, or set fire to the whole rotten house. It's always the same. Monday night, 7:45 p.m. The ritual begins. I hear the crunch of tires on gravel, his car easing into the driveway. The engine cuts. The door slams. Then, silence. Not the peaceful kind. This silence coils itself around your ribs like a belt, tugging tighter, stealing your breath until you can't even trust the sound of your own heartbeat. I sit there on the edge of the bed, the lamp casting a weak glow against the floral wallpaper I once adored, pale pink roses and curling vines. I chose it when I still believed this house would be filled with laughter, with warmth, with children's voices. Now it mocks me. Just another reminder that nothing here belongs to me anymore. Not the walls, not the air, not even the skin I live in. My name is Levina Mars. I am 38 years old. I used to be a school teacher, the kind of woman who believed kindness could mend anything. But life doesn't mend, it carves. It carves away until all the soft parts are gone, and what's left is something harder, sharper, unrecognizable. These days, I am a wife in name only, and every Monday night, my husband makes sure I remember exactly what that name costs. His presence enters before he does. The stench of whiskey laced with cologne. Not mine. Hers. Solar's. It clings to him, a perfume of betrayal. His boots strike the hardwood with sharp, deliberate clicks, like the ticking of a countdown. Keys clatter against the console, tossed with just enough force to make me flinch. That sound is my warning bell. He's already angry, and then his voice cuts through the air, low and ragged. "I told you, Levana," he growls, dragging out my name like it's poison on his tongue. Solar likes the towels folded a certain way. Why is that so damn hard for you to understand? I keep my lips sealed. I learned long ago that silence is the only language that doesn't make it worse. He steps into the bedroom slowly, savoring my stillness like a predator circling its prey. His face is rigid, lips pressed thin, nostrils flaring with each breath. His eyes gleam with cruel expectation, and I notice, with a sting that twists my stomach, that he's wearing the shirt I ironed earlier, the one I pressed with care, the one I smoothed every wrinkle from, just so he could wear it for her. And that's where Monday night begins. That morning, I had ironed the shirt he's wearing now. I remember the hiss of steam, the way the fabric softened beneath the press of heat, how I smoothed it carefully like some ritual of devotion. I gave it to him fresh and crisp, thinking maybe, just maybe, he'd notice. Maybe he'd soften, maybe tonight would be different. But the irony slices through me now. He wears it not as proof of care, but as armor for cruelty. His hand rises before I can even breathe. Then comes the slap, flat, sharp, merciless against the side of my face. The sound is louder than the pain. At first, a crack that ricochets off the walls. My head snaps with the force. My body folds, and suddenly the hardwood is rushing toward me. Instinct takes over. I crumple, curl, brace. My ear rings, a high, shrill whine like a distant alarm, and my vision narrows until the world is just a blur of light and shadow. My cheek burns, but I don't cry. I haven't cried in a long time. Something inside me dried up months ago, maybe years. Once the tears stop coming, your soul seems to retreat, burying itself deep enough so it doesn't have to witness what your body endures. You think you're in control of anything? He roars above me, his shadow blotting out the dim light. You think just because your name's on the damn mail, you matter in this house. Another blow lands, this time lower, cracking into my ribs. Pain flares white hot, and my body twists as if to escape it, though there's nowhere to go. He spits the words like venom. Monday nights belong to Solar. I'll show you who's boss in this house. His spit follows, landing on the floor inches from my face. And then comes the line. The one he always saves, like the cruel punchline of a joke, only he laughs at. You're barren, worthless. Then just like that, it's over. He storms out, his boots pounding a rhythm of finality down the hall. No pause, no glance back, no flicker of guilt. He leaves as if he's just taken out the trash, as if bruising me is nothing more than a chore ticked off his list. I lie there on the cold hardwood, my cheek pressed to the floorboards, trying to remember what it used to feel like to be loved, or at least to be safe, but all I find is the metallic taste flooding my mouth. Eat blood. I spit it out, but the taste clings, bitter and sharp. Slowly, I claw my way toward the nightstand, using it as an anchor to pull myself upright. My body protests every movement. The ache is deep, not just from tonight's violence, but from months, years of accumulating damage. Pain blurs time. It melts the days into one long smear of suffering, until you can't tell where the bruises end and the memories begin. Each step toward the bathroom feels like walking through wet cement, heavy and dragging. I flick the light on, and the reflection that greets me in the mirror twists my stomach. My left eye is swelling, ballooning before my gaze. Blood snakes from the corner of my mouth, a dark smear against pale skin. My hair is a tangled, frizzy mess. I used to brush it every night, a quiet ritual before bed. I can't remember the last time I cared enough to lift a brush. I dab at my split lip with a tissue, then press a cold washcloth against my cheek. The sting makes me wince, but at least it's something I can control. For a moment, there's silence, thick, heavy, familiar. I assume he's gone, but then his voice. It floats down the hallway, syrupy and soft, completely transformed. Hey baby. He croons, the same mouth that spat poison at me minutes ago now, dripping with sweetness. I freeze, every muscle locked. Yeah, no, she's fine, he murmurs. She won't bother us anymore. I made sure of it, and then comes the laughter. His laughter, that sound I haven't heard in months, maybe years. The kind of laugh that used to belong to me. Once, it was the sound of our beginning, the warmth that pulled me in, the music that convinced me love was safe. Now it's a blade, sliding under my ribs. He saves it for her now. For Solar, I lean against the bathroom wall, breath caught in my chest, trying to steady myself as the truth presses down on me. It isn't the slap, or the punch, or even the spit that finally cracks me open tonight. No, it's that sound, the joy in his voice, when he speaks to another woman. Her name is everywhere, on his lips, on receipts crumpled in his pockets, on the boxes that arrive at the door with ribbons and bows that were never meant for me. Solar, she's a ghost in every corner of this house, a shadow draped across every room. I've never met her, yet tonight she feels closer than ever. She might as well be standing right beside me in this bathroom, smirking, while her perfume still clings to his skin. I lower myself onto the edge of the bathtub, the porcelain cool against my aching body. I stare at the tiles beneath my feet, neat little squares in uniform rows. Each one feels like a cell. My bathroom is a cell. My home is a prison. My marriage is solitary confinement, punctuated by weekly assaults. And as I sit there, clutching the washcloth, staring at the cage I'm trapped in, my mind drifts back to the woman I used to be, before the silence, before the bruises, before Solar's name became a noose tightening around my life. The girl I was 10 years ago feels like a ghost now. She was soft, trusting, a believer in the old fairy tales. She thought love could stitch together anything torn. She thought loyalty meant safety, that patience could outlast any storm. That girl was naive. That girl is gone. What stands in her place isn't stronger, not yet, but harder, quieter, but not because I've run out of words. No, silence has become my armor. Every unspoken thought is a weapon waiting for its moment. If I'm going to survive this life, I can't just endure it. I'll have to outlast it, outsmart it, play the long game. I click the bathroom light off and shuffle back toward the bedroom, each step echoing with the weight of tonight's truth. It isn't just my marriage splintering beneath his fists. It's me, my worth, my role, my dignity. All of it bartered away in whispers I was never meant to hear, negotiated behind closed doors, erased from existence by people who promised to protect me. I sit at the edge of the bed again, the same edge where hours ago I waited for the first strike. Only now, something feels different. I touch the swollen side of my face, fingers grazing the heat of broken capillaries beneath skin. My eyes fall shut. I breathe in the silence, and in that darkness I whisper to myself, so quietly even the walls can't catch it. So this is what being invisible feels like. When the sun comes, it creeps into the room like an intruder, pale and hesitant, as though even daylight is uncertain whether it belongs here. Light filters through the sheer curtains, brushing across my face, painting over bruises with a fragile kind of apology. I don't move right away. I lie still, cocooned in silence, the house around me vast and too quiet, as if mocking me with its emptiness. Mornings aren't mornings anymore. They're recovery missions. Every part of me aches in its own private language, ribs tender, shoulder stiff, lip cracked. But it isn't the outer wounds that make breathing hard. It's the hollow space inside, a silence beneath the silence, a grief with no name. I turn toward Corin's side of the bed. The sheets lie untouched, smooth and cold. He never came back after his syrupy call to Solar last night. His pillow still carries her scent, sickly sweet, the saccharine perfume that clings to him every time he returns from her arms. It isn't detergent. It isn't even his own cologne. It's hers, that cloying, expensive sweetness I could pick out of a department store lineup blindfolded. Slowly I sit up. The sheets drag along my legs, reluctant to release me, as if they'd rather I stay hidden in their folds. I place my feet on the floor, like I'm waiting for the world to grant me permission to begin the day. But the world gives no such thing. From the hallway, faint sounds reach me. The clink of porcelain, the low hum of the coffee machine. That can only mean one thing. Odora is awake. I tie the sash of my old robe around me, the seams frayed, one stubborn stain etched into the fabric like a scar I can't bleach away. I step into the hallway, each footfall reminding me that this isn't my home. It's someone else's kingdom, and I am the guest who's overstayed her welcome. Odora stands in the kitchen, posture flawless, as always, perfectly erect, hands wrapped with precision around her porcelain coffee cup. Not a hair dares stray from place. Her white robe gleams, initials embroidered in fine thread that mock me every time I see them. Even her slippers make no sound against the tiles, as though the house itself conspires to accommodate her. She turns slightly when she senses me. Her eyes flicker to my face. The swelling has ripened overnight, blooming purple and red across my cheek. I haven't bothered to cover it up. What would be the point? Her lips curve, not into a smile, but into something crueler, something sharper. Makeup can't hide weakness, dear, she says, her tone casual, as if commenting on the weather. I don't answer. I move to the fridge, retrieve a carton of orange juice, pour myself a glass. My hand trembles, not from fear, but from rage, that has no place to go. She sets her cup down with a delicate click. If you had given him a child, she says, evenly, maybe he'd stay home. The juice hits my tongue, sour and warm. I swallow hard, forcing it down. My eyes rise to meet hers. You think I wanted this? I ask, though I don't expect an answer. You think I chose not to have children? She takes another slow sip, her gaze fixed on mine, unwavering. A woman's worth is her womb. Levina. Don't act surprised that he strays. The words cut deeper than the bruises. I turn and leave, before I say something she can twist into another accusation, before the fury coiled inside me lashes out in a way I can't take back. Back in the bedroom, I close the door behind me and lean against it, exhaling so hard my ribs ache. I collapse onto the chair at my vanity, not to fix myself, but to sit with the remnants of the woman I once was. The mirror is merciless. My reflection stares back, red-rimmed eyes, swollen cheek, split lip. I don't look like a wife. I look like a mugshot, a criminal captured after the crime of surviving. I switch on my phone, not to call anyone. There's no one to call, no friends left, no family to turn to. Just a screen to scroll, a window into lives curated and polished, lives untouched by this kind of rot. My thumb halts on a sponsored post. A dealership gala, Corin, center frame, sharp suit, proud smile. He looks like a man who belongs to the world, but it isn't the suit, or the sleek car in the background, that stops my breath. It's the woman beside him. She's draped in red, the dress clinging to her like it was sewn to worship her body. And her hair gleams, her skin glows. She leans into him with a confidence that says she knows she belongs there, that she owns him now. But it isn't her beauty that makes my heart seize. It's the necklace around her throat. My necklace. The one Corin gave me for our 5th anniversary. I remember how his hands trembled slightly when he fastened the clasp of that necklace around my neck, how he smiled and said it was one of a kind, that it reminded him of me, delicate, classic, unforgettable. Back then, I believed him. Back then, I thought gifts meant something, that promises held weight. Now, years later, I stared at a photo glowing on my phone screen, my stomach twisting in a way that felt both familiar and foreign. There she was, the woman he left me for, smiling wide, draped in the very necklace he once swore belonged only to me. My necklace, my memory, my history, wrapped around her throat like it had been waiting for her all along. I opened my jewelry drawer without thinking, hands moving before my mind could catch up. The drawers creaked open, velvet pouches spilling, boxes rattling, side pockets tugged apart, empty, gone. He hadn't even bothered to replace it with something else, something cheap to cover the theft. No, he'd simply taken it from me, stripped away the sentiment, and handed it over to her like it was never mine. And that hurt more than any price tag ever could. That necklace wasn't about money. It was about who we used to be, or at least who I thought we were. My eyes drifted back to the photo. His arm was wound around her waist like it had a new home. His face tilted toward hers, mouth curved in a laugh I couldn't remember hearing in years. A soft, unguarded expression that once might have been mine, but now looked alien on him. Maybe he never really laughed like that with me. Maybe I just imagined it all along. I tossed the phone onto the bed, the screen going dark, and forced myself to stand. I didn't cry this time. No more tears. They had dried up somewhere between his last excuse and the moment I stopped believing in them. Instead, I crossed the room to the closet, and dragged out a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside, the fragments of a life I once thought was solid. Old photos, anniversary cards, post-it notes he used to stick on the fridge, when words came easier for him than actions. Back when being his wife meant being cherished instead of chained. One card caught my attention. Our second anniversary. His handwriting sprawled across the page, familiar and cruel now. Even on your worst days, you're my best decision. I held it for a long time, my fingers trembling, eyes burning with something sharper than sadness. Then I ripped it in half. Then again, and again, until the words were nothing but confetti, slipping between my fingers. This wasn't grief anymore. This was awakening. I returned to the mirror, and stared at my own reflection. Same face, same eyes, but something behind them had shifted. Hardened. I didn't know what my next step would be, but I knew this much. Next Monday would not look like last Monday. Not if I had anything to say about it. By Wednesday, the storm inside me was too loud to ignore. I moved through the house like a ghost. Every creak of the floorboards, every hum of the refrigerator, louder than it should have been, like the world was mocking me. The sky outside was overcast, swollen with rain it refused to release, clouds holding back their secrets, the way I'd been holding back mine. Corin hadn't come home since Monday night, and I hadn't expected him to. His excuses had dried up months ago. The lies, late meetings, client dinners, late nights at the office, were gone now. He didn't even bother. He simply disappeared, and I was meant to accept it. I carried my lukewarm coffee through the quiet house, pausing to glance at the photos on the walls. Wedding smiles, anniversary dinners, the framed celebration of his promotion, frozen moments, now nothing but still life mockeries of a life that didn't exist anymore. My phone buzzed faintly on the counter, but I didn't bother looking. Texts weren't from him, calls weren't from anyone I wanted to hear. Doctors, bills, reminders, old friends I no longer had the strength to lie to. So instead, I cleaned. It was the one thing left I could control. The one action that made sense when everything else felt like unraveling string. I pulled sweaters from the closet, folding, stacking, tucking them into neat piles, and then I pushed aside a stack of shoeboxes and froze. There it was, hidden deep in the back, tucked behind an old suitcase we hadn't touched in years. A notebook, plain, ordinary, out of place, but my gut told me immediately it wasn't ordinary at all. The cover was plain, beige, unremarkable, no markings at all, just another forgotten notebook shoved behind luggage. But the moment I picked it up, my chest tightened, because scrawled across the front, in handwriting that looked alarmingly like mine, was my name. For a second, I froze. My name, written in the loops and curves of letters I recognized as my own. But I hadn't touched this notebook before. Confusion burned into dread as I opened it. The first page was dated months back. Then the next, and the next, page after page of journal entries. Only they weren't mine. They looked like mine. Every swoop of ink, every jagged hesitation that mirrored how my pen sometimes caught on paper when I was rushing. But the words, they were poison. They painted me as someone I didn't recognize. Unhinged, paranoid, jealous, controlling. One entry described me screaming at Corin for no reason and shattering a dish across the kitchen floor. Another claimed I deliberately hid his keys so he'd miss a meeting, sabotaging him out of spite. My stomach twisted tighter with every word. I could almost hear him reading this aloud to someone, nodding solemnly as the fabricated story unfolded. My hands shook as I flipped through more pages. Whoever wrote this didn't just mimic my handwriting, they captured my rhythms, my turns of phrase, my little quirks. Only they twisted every detail into a narrative that made me look like a danger to myself and others. It read less like a diary and more like a carefully drafted case file, a script, a weapon. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the notebook heavy and limp in my hands. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was strategy. They weren't just trying to erase me from his life. They were building a record, a story where I was the villain. The unstable wife, the unfit partner, the woman who needed to be handled, contained, discarded. And then I remembered. Just last week, over coffee, Odora had tilted her head and said it so casually it nearly slipped past me. You've been so tense lately, maybe talking to someone would help. Sometimes grief makes us unpredictable. She stirred sugar into her cup with deliberate slowness, her eyes sharp even as her tone pretended softness. Grief. That was her word for it. Not my grief, hers she meant. Infertility, of course. The ghost child I couldn't give her son, the grandchild she mentioned so often I half expected her to set a place at the dinner table for it. That child had become the absence that defined me in her eyes, a wound she wouldn't stop poking. Back in the present, I snapped the notebook shut, heart hammering. I slid it into the drawer of my nightstand, not to leave it there but to keep it close. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but one thing had become terrifyingly clear. I hadn't just lost my place in this family. It had already been stolen from me, carefully, methodically, one forged page at a time. Later that afternoon, I tried to steady myself with something simple: dishes. The rhythm of clinking glass and porcelain kept my hands busy, gave my mind something to anchor to, instead of spiraling. That was when I noticed it. Corin's briefcase, sitting on the counter, left slightly open, like he'd forgotten to lock it. A stack of envelopes peeked out from the inner pocket, one of them slipping halfway free. I told myself I wasn't snooping. I told myself I was just cleaning. But my fingers moved anyway, sliding the envelope free before I could argue with myself. The paper was thick, glossy, cardstock used for weddings, galas, events that cost more than they should. My name wasn't on it, but I opened it anyway, and there it was. A baby shower invitation. Join us in celebrating Solara Viral and the future of the Hale legacy. The words blurred as my vision swam. The date was this Sunday. The location our house. Not a banquet hall, not some rented space with flowers and catering bills. My house. Our house. Without me. The words on the invitation blurred and warped until the shape of the letters stopped meaning anything at all. My name wasn't on it. Not as a co-host, not even as a courtesy mention. I was erased from my own life, as if I had already been excised cleanly from the photograph of this family. They were hosting a celebration under my roof, in my kitchen, in the very dining room where I had set out plates and lit candles, and fought to make a home, and they were doing it for the woman who was replacing me. My hands clenched, the cardstock crumpling under my fingers. My pulse roared in my throat, in my fingertips behind my eyes like a drumbeat demanding release. Every nerve in my body screamed to smash, to burn, to howl, until the walls split open. I wanted to tear that invitation into strips, watch the edges curl black in the stove flame. I wanted destruction, but I didn't. Because that would make me exactly the woman they were already writing into existence in that fake diary. The unhinged wife, the paranoid liability. No. Instead, I smoothed the paper flat again, laid it gently on the table, and touched the counter beneath my palm. My counter. The tiles I had fought to afford. The cabinets I painted myself after Corin tossed me that careless permission. Do whatever you want with it. He never meant it, not really. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling while a storm teased outside, thunder rumbling but no rain falling. And somewhere in that sleepless stretch, something hardened inside me. I swung my legs out of bed, pulled open my laptop, and began the work of survival. I forwarded emails, old conversations, anything that hinted at his absence, his neglect, his betrayals. I snapped photos of the forged diary pages, screenshotted the baby shower invitation. I wasn't scrolling anymore. I was documenting, cataloging. I was building a crime scene out of my life, a ledger of everything they thought they could bury. I didn't know the endgame yet, but I knew this silence had become my cage, and they were using it to suffocate me. That stopped tonight. They wanted me gone. Fine. But I would not make it easy. They had mistaken quiet for weakness. What they would learn is that I was still here. Thursday morning, I rose hollow-eyed, older than I had been the night before, but sharper too. The old version of me, docile, compliant, forever bargaining with herself, was gone. In her place stood someone exhausted but clear, someone willing to fight. I combed through years of emails, saved receipts, screenshots of messages that hinted at things unsaid, but the further I dug, the more I realized this wasn't about catching a cheating husband anymore. This was bigger, more calculated. He wasn't just betraying me, he was erasing me. By Friday morning, drizzle slicked Charleston sidewalks in a dull gray sheen, the sky pressing low and heavy, like a secret about to split open. I moved through the kitchen with deliberate calm. The package I had ordered earlier in the week had arrived yesterday. A recording device, no larger than a tube of lipstick. I sat at the table, unboxed it carefully, read the instructions twice, then practiced with fake conversations, to be sure it worked. My hands were steady, my breathing even. When I was satisfied, I slid it behind the decorative air vent cover, near the dining room. From there, it could hear everything: the kitchen, the breakfast nook, the hallway where Adora loved to linger with her poisoned whispers. I made the house look ordinary, cleaned like usual, left the front door unlocked, pulled my car out of the driveway, parked it down the block, then I doubled back through the alley, crouched behind the garage, and waited. It was reckless, dangerous, but suspicion wasn't enough anymore. I needed truth. At 11:45, Corin's car pulled in. Solara stepped out first, dressed like she was heading to a luncheon, rather than conspiring with a married man and his mother. Adora greeted her at the door, arms wide, smile stretched so wide it made bile rise in my throat. I waited until they disappeared inside, then slipped quietly through the back door, shutting it behind me with a soft click. My pulse was thunder in my ears as I crept upstairs and folded myself into the linen closet, the air vent connecting me to the kitchen below. I couldn't catch every word, but the recorder would. Still, enough reached me to etch itself into my bones. Solara's voice was the first to ring out, light, amused, arrogant. "I'm serious. We need to get her out before the baby shower. If she throws a scene, it ruins everything." Adora's reply was colder, measured. "I agree. The girl's not well. No children, no support system. She isolates herself. A 72-hour hold isn't scandal, it's concern." Then Corin. His voice was lower, harder to make out, but I caught the words that would haunt me forever. "The judge will believe us. We're respected. She's just tired. People will understand." My stomach turned. Not shock. No. The surprise had already died weeks ago. This was worse. This was confirmation. Every fear I'd had was real, rehearsed, planned. They weren't wondering how to get rid of me. They had already decided. They just needed the perfect moment to execute it. I stayed cramped in that closet until I heard the engine fade down the street. When I finally unfolded myself, my body was stiff, my back aching, my knees creaking, but I had what I needed. That evening, after a long, scalding shower that didn't wash the sickness off me, I waited. Corin came home, around 8, reeking of steakhouse grease and aftershave. He didn't even glance at me as he passed down the hallway. I counted the minutes until I heard the water running upstairs. My window. I slipped into the office. His laptop glowed on the desk, screen wide open. No password prompt. Rookie mistake, Corin. I tapped the touchpad, heart hammering, and pulled up the bank website. My name was still on the joint account, still legal, and then the numbers appeared. Thousands of dollars, siphoned over the past 6 months. Jewelry, hotel stays, spa visits in cities I'd never set foot in. And then one transaction that froze me cold. A $2,100 charge to a women's clinic. 3 years ago, under my name. I blinked. Read it twice, 3 times. I had never been to that clinic, never even heard of it. But the record listed my insurance, my detail, my identity, and in that moment, The realization hit like ice in my veins. Someone had been rewriting not just my story, but my history. Someone had been moving in my shadow, wearing my name like a mask, scribbling their fiction in my handwriting as if trying to erase me line by line. They forged a version of me I didn't recognize, unstable, hysterical, dangerous, and then planted it like evidence waiting to be found. That was no accident. That was intent. So when I copied the statement, saved the PDF, and emailed it to myself, it wasn't paranoia. It was survival. I even took photos with my phone, backup for the backup. My hands moved steady, precise, while my chest felt like it was cracking open. I closed the laptop just before Corin shut off the shower. By the time he stepped into the bedroom, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, still, quiet, unreadable. He glanced at me, his voice stripped of warmth. "You should get some sleep. You've been looking worn out lately." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He mistook silence for surrender. But silence was the only weapon I had left in plain sight. That night, I created a new folder on my computer and named it only one word: evidence. Inside, I began laying the bricks of my survival. Photos of the forged diary, screenshots of the baby shower invite, bank statements, PDFs of medical bills I never signed for, and the recordings of their whispered betrayals. Not panic, not fury. Calculation. They had scripted my downfall, every page carefully crafted to crown me the villain. But they had made a fatal mistake. They taught me how to play their game, and I was about to rewrite the ending. By Saturday morning, I didn't flinch when I saw myself in the mirror. The bruises blooming along my jaw, the split at the corner of my lip, they weren't shame anymore. They were armor, proof. I dressed in black, simple blouse, jeans, no jewelry, no perfume, nothing for them to dismiss as vanity or distraction, just the raw imprint of what they had done. I descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, like a drumbeat. In the kitchen, Odora sat at the table stirring her coffee in perfect, practiced grace, pearls at her throat like a crown. Corin sat across from her, cutting his eggs with military precision. Both of them paused when they saw me. "You look like hell," Corin muttered without looking up. I leaned close, kissed his cheek slowly, deliberately, leaving behind the red trace of my split lip, like a signature written in blood. When he touched his face and saw the stain, his mask cracked, his eyes flicked to mine, not with anger, not even with guilt, but with fear, a flicker, small, but enough. Odora's spoon stilled mid-stir, porcelain tapping faintly against china. For the first time, she said nothing. My voice was low, steady, cutting the air like glass. "So do you. You just can't see it yet." Then I walked away without slamming a single door. The silence I left behind was heavier than steel. Later, while running errands, I moved through stores like a soldier gathering supplies for war. Printer ink, paper, flash drives, each item small, ordinary but monumental in the plan taking shape. At the grocery store, I ran into Miss Lita, one of Odora's old church friends. She'd always carried herself with that quiet southern grace, the kind that notices everything and says almost nothing. This time, she stopped me, her hand brushing my arm with uncharacteristic urgency. "Levina," she whispered, voice trembling, "you deserve to know." I turned, wary. "Know what?" She looked around before leaning close. "Solar's not just some girl. She's Odora's." The words slipped through me like a blade. "Her what?" "Her daughter. She had her in college, years before Corin's father, gave her up for adoption but stayed in touch through a lawyer. Solar came back last year. Odora brought her in quiet, careful. She's been grooming her, honey, grooming her to take your place." I stood there frozen, cart forgotten, my pulse pounding so hard it drowned out the hum of the store. A secret daughter, a decades-old scandal repackaged as a legacy, a replacement built in blood, and Corin, willing to pretend this was all natural, ordained, inevitable. Back home, the walls of the house felt colder than ever. This wasn't infidelity anymore. It was a dynasty being rewritten, a conspiracy of bloodlines and betrayals, designed to erase me entirely. I laid out everything on the coffee table: photos, statements, records, proof, and added the final piece: Solar's birth certificate, which I'd confirmed with the courthouse that morning. The mother's maiden name matched Odora's exactly. She hadn't just planned this, she had waited decades for it. I reset the locks on the house, only my fingerprint opening the door now, and drafted an email. Subject line: for when you think I'll be silent. Every file attached, every secret exposed, and beneath it, a single line of truth: you can replace a wife, but not the truth. I didn't send it. Timing was everything. Tomorrow was their baby shower. Tomorrow they would parade their lie through a house that was still mine. Tomorrow they would believe they had already won. Let them. Let them drink champagne and laugh in my kitchen, smile for photographs under my roof, all while the evidence pulsed in my folder like a waiting detonation. At exactly 2:17 p.m. on Sunday, I slipped into my own house through the garden entrance, not in black this time, but in white. Stark, undeniable, unignorable. A ghost returned to her home, a wife they had tried to bury, stepping back into the light. Conversations dulled to murmurs, then to silence, as heads turned toward me. Neighbors, church friends, business partners, faces that had looked away from me for months now couldn't stop staring. The room stilled as if someone had pulled the air out of it, and that was only the beginning. I lay in bed longer than usual that morning, not to avoid the day, but because for the first time in years, I no longer feared what it might bring. The sheets were smooth, untouched by anyone else's restless turning. The house was still, no footsteps pounding down the hallway, no voice barking from the kitchen about misplaced keys or bitter coffee. Just rain ticking softly against the glass, and the sound of my own breathing. Quiet, steady, unhurried. When I finally rose, I did so without rush. Barefoot on the cool floor, I wrapped myself in a soft gray sweater and walked to the kitchen. I brewed a single cup of coffee, one sugar, a splash of cream, my way, not his. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It wasn't the kind that crept down the walls like mold, choking me from the inside out. This quiet was sacred now. Space, breath, mine. I sat at the kitchen table and sifted through the pile of mail I'd ignored. Bills, a church newsletter, and one envelope with no return address. Handwriting I recognized instantly. Kessia. Inside, a single page. Levina, you reminded me why I became a doctor. You reminded me that truth is only worth something when someone is brave enough to stand behind it. You reminded me of my mother. She stayed too long too. Thank you. I hope you remind others why they deserve to live free. Kayan. I held the letter for a long time, eyes closed, letting the words settle like warm stones in my chest. Then I slid it into the drawer by the stove, not to hide it, but to keep it safe, somewhere it could rest without demanding to be seen. By mid-morning, I dressed in jeans and a navy blouse, tied my hair back simply, slipped on flats, no armor, no disguise, just myself. I drove to the prison under a silver sky, the wet road glinting like steel. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. My heart did not race. I wasn't going for closure. I wasn't going for peace. I was going to look him in the eye and let him see the woman he hadn't managed to bury. The visitation room was all steel and echo, cold, clinical. I sat at the table with my fingers laced in front of me and waited. When Corin walked in, he wore beige, the universal color of the caged. His hair was cropped shorter, his eyes sunken, yet he carried the same smug tilt in his shoulders, as if the world still owed him an apology. He sat down across from me, silent. At last he asked, "Why are you here?" I met his eyes, calm, steady. "To show you I survived. To show you that you didn't break me." His jaw clenched. He said nothing. "You wanted to bury me," I continued, voice low but unwavering. "But I grew roots instead. I'm not here to forgive you. I'm not here for anything you think you still have to give. I'm here so that the last version of me you ever see is the one who walked through hell and came out holding the matches." His mouth twisted, his voice a bitter whisper. "I don't care what you think." I stood, pushing the chair back slowly. I said, steady as stone. But I do. And that's new. I left him sitting there, beige against gray walls, and I didn't look back. Outside, the rain had softened to a mist. I stood in the parking lot, lifted my face to the sky, not for poetry, not for anyone to see, but because for once, the rain touched me and I didn't flinch. The weeks that followed unfolded without my presence in the courtroom. I didn't need to sit there watching the slow dismantling of the empire they had built on lies. Word traveled anyway. Solar's fraud exposed. Adora stripped from the charity board she had ruled for over a decade. The bank pulling out of Corin's dealership contract. The walls they had polished for years were finally crumbling. Not fast, not all at once, but stone by stone. I started writing again, not about them, not about betrayal or revenge, about me, about what healing looked like when it wasn't staged, about survival when it wasn't just escape, but rebuilding. I didn't date, didn't search for someone to fill the empty space. I didn't need fixing, didn't need saving. Flowers came, phone calls trickled in, neighbors nodded with hesitant respect, but I didn't need validation. I already knew. Some mornings I walked to the corner bakery. The woman who ran it used to give me pity smiles, those small half-curves of the mouth that said she saw me, but didn't dare to intervene. Now, she handed me my coffee and said, "You're stronger than most people I know." I would nod, thank her, and walk home with quiet dignity. The house still creaked. The roof still leaked when rain pressed too long against the shingles, but it was mine. And so was I. For years I thought being a good wife meant staying, enduring, fixing, silencing myself to protect his reputation, his family's image. I thought love was sacrifice, and loyalty was submission. But I was wrong. Now I know better. Being a good woman isn't about erasing yourself for someone else's comfort. It's knowing when leaving is the only way to live. I didn't burn the bridge. I simply chose never to walk back across it. And sometimes, the strongest thing a woman can do is leave quietly, never looking over her shoulder, and never apologizing for surviving. My story isn't just about betrayal, it's about reclaiming your voice when the world tries to steal it. So let me ask you this. Have you ever stayed too long in a place that was slowly erasing you? Tell us in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of survival, resilience, and women who refused to disappear.